Our scripture is from John 20:19 through 29. When it was evening on that first day of the week, the disciples were gathered together with the doors locked because they feared the Jews. Jesus came, stood among them, and said to them, "Peace be with you." Having said this, he showed them his hands and his side. So the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you." After saying this, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." But Thomas, called Twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples were telling him, "We've seen the Lord." But he said to them, "If I don't see the marks of the nails in his hands, put my finger into the marks of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will never believe." A week later, his disciples were indoors again, and Thomas was with them. Even though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and look at my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Don't be faithless, but believe." Thomas responded to him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." You may be seated.
Well, good morning and greetings, everybody. How y'all doing today? Hey, it is so good to see you all. Welcome to Woodlands. It's good to have you here. We want to welcome all those watching online as well. Glad you could tune in. Hey, give us a little shout out there online. Let us know you're there. I want to say I have some really big news to share. As a matter of fact, a couple of months ago here at Woodlands, we started taking donations to raise money to buy new chairs. If you haven't been here for a while, or if this is your first time here, this is a brand new renovation that we've just opened up a few weeks ago. We used to worship this way, right? And now we turned it from portrait to landscape, if you will, okay? And we have a brand new screen, brand new projector, new lights, new sound system, and we're just really, really pumped about it. All the sound panels, yeah, praise God, right? I mean, it's been a great experience. And the people of Woodlands have given a lot of money to make this happen, but we wanted to get new chairs. We didn't have enough for new chairs. So we said, if you could you give something toward that? And over about 2.5 months, people just kept giving and giving. We wanted to get 300 new chairs. And I'm happy to tell you, we needed to raise $25,000 in a little over 2 months. We raised more than $25,000 so we can buy our new chairs. Isn't that great? I'm telling you right now, you people of Woodlands, you never cease to amaze me. I am the proudest pastor in America that I get to shepherd you all and hang out with you all every Sunday, and many of you throughout the week. So what a blessing that is for me. Well, happy Easter, everybody. Happy Resurrection Day. Amen. Well, all around the earth during this 24-hour period, there will be literally more than 2 billion people who will gather together in churches who will celebrate and praise the name of Jesus Christ on this resurrection day. And that's something to be proud of. And I am so glad that you all are here, and those of you watching online, that you're joining in as well to join in this celebration. Now, it's well known that the most attended day in church of the year is Easter Sunday, right? I mean, that's all over America, all over the world. You'll get the most people attending church on Easter Sunday, and I think that is awesome. As a matter of fact, if you're only going to come to church one day a year, this is the one to come. All right, can I just tell you? And what I want to do now, though, is I want to share some research with you that just might make you think about the possibility of making church a weekly habit for you, because this research is hot off the press. It just came out a couple weeks ago, and I'm telling you, it is amazing. As I read it, I couldn't wait to share it with you all. Here's what it is. It's an NBC report. A woman named Tara Anand wrote this article, and she writes, according to a recent Gallup poll, a better predictor of life satisfaction than educational attainment or even income is religious service attendance. What? Let me tell you some more. 67% of weekly service attenders reported being very satisfied, whereas that was true of only 51% of the nation as a whole, and for only 61% of those making more than $100,000 a year. But the skeptics among you will ask, wait a minute, how can we tell the religious participation is only causing people to flourish? What if instead people with low satisfaction, those with serious illness or disability, for instance, are just less likely to attend religious service? Well, can I just tell you, I am so happy that you skeptics among us asked that question, because I'm going to answer it. The article goes on to say, our team at the Human Flourishing Program, that's Harvard University, has concluded a number of studies to assess how religious participation affects the various ways Americans thrive over time. One of our recent studies, using data gathered over many years and tens of thousands of U.S. children, retirees, and nurses, yielded results similar to what the Gallup poll cited above. Religious participation strongly predicted higher subsequent life satisfaction, even after controlling for prior health, socioeconomic status, and other demographic factors. Religious participation seems to promote individual flourishing in a variety of interlocking ways, beginning with the friendships that it fosters. And therefore, you know, here at Woodlands, one of our highest priorities and greatest emphases is on small groups. We want to see everybody at Woodlands involved in a small group so that you can make friends and have people that you can do life together with. The article goes on to say, now get this, the effects are particularly strong with respect to marriage. So married people, listen up. Those of you who'd like to be married, listen up. All right? With weekly service attenders being about 50% less likely to divorce than never attenders. Come on now. Really? That's why we got to get never attenders coming to church. We want to save their marriages. Religious participation also strongly protects against self-destructive behaviors. One of our studies found that compared to never attenders, regular attenders were substantially less likely, 68% less likely for women, 33% less likely for men, to die from alcohol poisoning, drug overdose, and suicide. Wow is right. Wow. But service attendance doesn't merely protect against dysfunction. It also seems to promote positive actions and attitudes, including greater generosity of your time and money. And by the way, many studies have been done showing that generous people tend to be happier people, and a greater sense of a purpose in life. So for those of you who come to church every week, no wonder you're so happy. Right? There it is. And for those of you who maybe you're at Woodlands today, you're checking it out, maybe somebody dragged you here to church today, I get it, okay? I really do. Hey, so glad that you're here, and I hope that today you'll make the decision to say, you know what? I'm going to make this a regular part of my life. I want to be happier in life. Come to church regularly. I want my marriage to be good. Come to church regularly. I don't want to die from alcohol poisoning and suicide. Come to church regularly, right? That'll do it. That'll do it. So, hey, speaking of purpose in life, Jesus whose resurrection we're celebrating today, right? And actually, we celebrate it every Sunday because Christianity came out of the Jewish tradition, and Jewish people worship on Saturday. That's their Sabbath. From Friday at 6 to Saturday at 6 is the Jewish Sabbath. When Jesus was resurrected on Sunday, those who were Christians coming out of Judaism but following Jesus, they made Sunday their Sabbath day. So actually, every Sunday is Resurrection Day at churches around the world. And I'll tell you, that's the way it is right here at Woodlands. We celebrate the resurrected Lord every Sunday. It's just a big party, and you're all invited, by the way. Love to have you. And those of you online, come on out. But Jesus, those who had followed Jesus, he was their purpose. And there were a few men and women who followed him, and they learned from him, and they learned to live their life the way that Jesus did. And Jesus had become their purpose in life. He had become their focus. He had become everything that they were giving their life to. Our Bible story for today starts with those followers called disciples hanging out together on a Sunday evening. Now, this was the third day after Jesus had been crucified. Now, many of you know the story, but for those who don't, I want you to know that Jesus was hung on a cross. He was killed by the Romans at the insistence of the Jews in the most cruel and sadistic way possible. Verse 19, we're going to jump in there. So John chapter 20, verse 19. If you've got your Bible, you can open it up there. If you've got a smartphone, download the YouVersion app. It's a Bible app. It's free. You can look at that. We'll also have it right up here on the screen behind me, so you can follow along. When it was evening on that first day of the week, so Sunday, the disciples were gathered together with the doors locked because they feared the Jews. Jesus came, stood among them, and said to them, "Peace be with you." Now, we see in the context of John chapter 20, if you look earlier in the chapter, that Mary Magdalene, she was one of the close followers of Jesus. She had gotten up early in the morning, and she went to the tomb where Jesus had been buried, expecting to find a big stone, a big wheel of a stone rolled in front of the tomb. In that day, what they did was they dug out through the rock an open space, and that was the tomb where you laid the body. Then this big stone was rolled over it so nobody could mess with it, all right? She gets there, the stone is rolled away. It would have taken a dozen strong men to have rolled that stone away, or something supernatural. And she looked into the tomb, and Jesus' body was gone. She was shocked. She ended up racing back to headquarters. That was the upper room where the other apostles, the close followers of Jesus, were. And she told them that the tomb was empty. When she told them that, two of the other disciples, Pete and another one that's unnamed, they raced to the tomb, and they got there, and they saw it was exactly as Mary said. But they did not believe anything at that time. At that time, it was not like they saw the empty tomb and said, "He was resurrected." No, they looked in, and they didn't know what happened. As a matter of fact, their worst fear was that somebody had come in, and they had stolen the body. And who would get blamed for that? Peter's thinking, moi. Right? That's who's going to get blamed for that. So later that Sunday evening, so they went that morning, then Sunday evening, the disciples were going to do what you do when you've lost someone very, very close to you, someone that you love, and now it seems like your life is without purpose. Many of you have gone through this. We've just gone through a horrible global pandemic, still dealing with kind of the tail ends of it in some ways. Many of you have lost loved ones. I've lost loved ones. I've lost a few brothers that were very, very dear to me through all of this. And when that happens, family gets together, friends get together, and you mourn, and you share stories, and you talk about maybe what could have been or what should have been. And that's what the disciples were doing. They were down. They were defeated. I mean, Jesus was gone. How could this be? How could this be? Their life was without purpose now. They were together in what must have been a good-sized room. They were together for both comfort and protection. And then as we read, Jesus suddenly shows up. And if you're just reading through the Bible and just kind of casually reading, you read that and you go, oh, and then suddenly Jesus was in the room and says, peace to you. What? Are you kidding me? I mean, they're in there. They're all together. They're probably eating a little something. It's Sunday evening. I mean, they've got the men in there, the women in there. The door is locked. Nobody knocks. And all of a sudden, Jesus is standing in there. You know, I'm pretty sure that Thaddeus didn't look up and say, yo, hola, Jesus. I mean, there had to be an incredible start. Like, what? You know, say, Philip, is that who I think it is? Yeah, I mean, they're just this incredible, you know, stir in the room, people jumping back and trying to figure out, I mean, what? How could this be? And Jesus' first words are what? Peace to you. I'll bet those were his first words, right? I mean, they were in a panic, right? They were in a fright at this point, you know, peace to you. He wanted to calm them down by the fact that he had just shown up in this room, and he wanted to let them know, I'm back, and it's all good. It's all good. Verse 20, having said this, he showed them his hands and his side. So the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. You see, his hands had been driven into a railroad tie of wood with a railroad spike. And his side had been pierced by a Roman spear. And so Jesus in his resurrected body is clearly in a different state than the typical human body. He can walk through walls. That's kind of crazy. And by the way, his body is a picture of what you and I will experience one day. If we believe in Jesus, if we receive him as our Savior and Lord, we follow him through life. One day when we die, we'll be resurrected, and we'll have that kind of body, a body that's not limited by time and space. Well, the scales were starting to fall off their eyes, and they believed. Well, all but one of the apostles believed at that time. For some reason, somebody was missing. Verse 24, but Thomas, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples were telling him, we've seen the Lord. But he said to them, if I don't see the mark of the nails in his hand and put my finger in the mark of the nails and put my hand in his side, I will never believe. Some of you today are like that. Some of you today, you've made your way to church or you've tuned in online and you're just like, you know what? My family talks about Jesus. My friends talk about Jesus. I will never believe. And if that's you, I want you to know there's good news for you today because you're not alone. One of the men who was closest to Jesus had a time in his life when he was the same way. And his name is Thomas. We don't know why he wasn't there, but we can guess that maybe he was just bitter and despondent at this whole thing. I mean, Thomas seems to be the quiet, cerebral type. You know the type I'm talking about? That's a nice way of describing a skeptic. If you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, he may have been an ISTJ. Or perhaps you've taken the Enneagram. He could have been an Enneagram 5. Enneagram 5s like to accumulate a lot of knowledge and tend to distance themselves from both people and emotions. Those who take the time to think through their options do not tend to handle it well when their calculated decision proves to be wrong. It's very, very hard for them to accept. It's called pride. When Jesus died on the cross, Thomas saw his entire foundation for his faith come crashing down. But in a lot of ways, I want you to know, he has this nickname. Do you all know his nickname? Doubting Thomas, right? You hardly think of Thomas without saying Doubting Thomas. But I want to show you today that that's really not a fair nickname for him. Because you see, he, like the other apostles, he had left everything to follow Jesus. Right? He took a courageous step in his life. In John 10, earlier in the Gospel of John, the Jews are found, and Jesus had been teaching, and the Jews tried to stone Jesus. Now, we're not talking about getting high here, folks, all right? Let's be clear. They had rocks in their hands, and they wanted to club Jesus with these stones until he was dead. That's how they did things back in that day. Well, the Bible tells us in John chapter 10 that Jesus escaped from that crowd. And it uses the word escaped, okay? I am sure the disciples were right there beside Jesus. And as they grabbed those stones, I can imagine a couple of them grabbed Jesus by the arms and said, "Time to fly." And out they went, and those guys were right there in the thick of it, shielding Jesus and getting him out of there. Jesus' band of brothers and sisters regrouped after that event near the Jordan River at a place where John the Baptist, a guy who did a lot of baptizing and who prepared the way for Jesus, used to baptize people. Now, if you've been following Woodlands the last few weeks, then you'll remember that I shared that Jesus was a revolutionary. He was a true revolutionary. And revolutionaries, they had to hide out from the authorities. And that's exactly what Jesus did. Jesus would go to the mountains and get away to hide out. He also would go to this place near the Jordan. That was one of his favorite hideouts. And that's where they were. In John 11, then, the next chapter, from the safety of their hideout, John tells us, now, by the way, John, who's writing this, was John the Apostle, who was a close friend of Jesus and one of his very closest friends. There were three who were especially close to Jesus, Peter, James, and John. This is that John. He's the one who wrote this. Everything he writes in this book is an eyewitness account. He's telling us exactly as he saw it. So John tells us in John 11 that they were at their hideout near the Jordan River, feeling safe, when suddenly the news gets to them that a young man named Lazarus had died. Now, Jesus was very close to Lazarus. We don't get a whole lot of detail, but Lazarus had two sisters, Mary and Martha, and their brother Lazarus. And Jesus, for some reason, he had spent time with them and he loved them dearly. So, Jesus gives the order. We're going back to Judea. The disciples weren't sure this was the best strategy. And so we read in John 11:8, "Rabbi," the disciples told him, "just now the Jews tried to stone you, and you're going back there again? Not a real strategic move, boss." All right? We ask that you listen to us on this one. But Jesus, like a strong leader or a strong parent, simply reiterates, "Let's go. Let's go." And that's when Thomas speaks up. And in John 11:16, Thomas called the twins, said to his fellow disciples, "Let's go too, that we may die with him." That doesn't sound like a doubting Thomas to me. That sounds like a brave Thomas to me. He didn't lack courage. He was absolutely willing to die for Jesus. He just wasn't prepared for Jesus to die. He was okay with dying for this prophet, this rabbi. He loved him that much. But how could he die? Now Jesus is dead. Thomas saw him die, so we presume. Jesus had been arrested by the Roman authorities. He was falsely accused by them. He was unjustly crucified. And Thomas, mulling this over in his head, is thinking, how could he be so powerless to let this happen? I saw him pull demons out of people. I saw him break bread and feed 5,000 people. I saw him do all these miraculous things, and yet he didn't stop this murder. And if he didn't stop that, how could he be the Son of God? I'm not buying it, Thomas said. Thomas says, had he been duped? Was it all a mirage? Have I just been stupid? Go ahead. Perhaps he didn't want to see the other disciples out of shame and guilt and embarrassment. But the other disciples, they wanted to see Thomas. And my friends, that's what good friends do. That's what good friends do. When you're down, when you're despondent, when you don't want anyone near you, you want to be left alone, your best friends say, no way, you're not going to be left alone. We want to be with you, and we want you to come with us. They know that the best way for Thomas to work out his doubts was in community. And we've seen the Lord, they said. But Thomas wasn't having any of it. The pain in Thomas' soul was just too deep to believe yet another fantasy. Listen to this song. It's called Thomas.
I'm sitting at the table, but I'm convinced there's not enough for me here. I'm waiting at the door, I don't knock, 'cause I fear that no one's there. Oh, it's hard to believe when death is what I've seen come again. Jesus, please rip the veil and help me see. Oh, Jesus, show me the holes in your hands, the star in your side, so I know you're alive. Oh, Jesus, I've been doubting a bit, just like Thomas did. Still you appear to him. I'm doing all the right things, but I question whether if you even care. Are you the God that's with me? Emmanuel, are you there? Oh, it's hard to believe when death is what I've seen come again. Jesus, please rip the veil and help me see. Oh, Jesus, show me the holes in your head, the scar in your side, so I know you're alive. Oh, Jesus, I've been doubting a bit, just like Thomas did. Still you appear to him. Oh, Jesus, show me the holes in your hands, the scar in your side, so I know you're alive, oh Jesus. I've been doubting a bit, just like Thomas did. Still you appeared to him, so appear to me. Oh, appear to me. Be real to me. Oh, I want to see. Oh, I believe. Come near to me. Be real to me. Oh, appear to me. Oh, Jesus, show me the holes in your head, the scar in your side, so I know you're alive. Oh, Jesus, I've been doubting a bit, just like Thomas did. Still you appear to him, so appear to me.
It's amazing the impact that friends can have on us, especially when they're looking out for our good, right? Sometimes friends aren't looking out for our good, they're looking out for their good. But when they're looking out for our good, as these friends did of Thomas, they came and they got him. In verse 20, 26 to 27, we read, a week later, his disciples were indoors. So it's the following Sunday night. And Thomas was with them. Even though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Now, for the 10 disciples, it's like, oh, second time this has happened. Yo, Jesus, welcome. How you doing? Thomas had to be out of his mind, when Jesus walked in. Then Jesus said to Thomas, put your finger here and look at my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Don't be faithless, but believe. Jesus addresses old Tom directly, which means what? He knows his thoughts. And he's been looking forward to this conversation with his friend. You can be sure, my friends, that Jesus knows your thoughts. You can be sure not only does he know them, but I want you to know that Jesus sees you. He sees you, and he loves you. And I want you to know that here at Woodlands, we don't care about your background. We don't care what's happened to you in the past. I mean, we care, but none of it keeps us from loving you. Everybody that walks in the doors of this church gets loved on. Jesus shows him his scars and then says to him, don't be faithless, but believe. Now, this phrase, don't be faithless, but believe, could be translated, don't be an unbeliever, be a believer. Verse 28, Thomas responded to him with this great confession, my Lord and my God. Seeing Jesus' scars on his body evokes an emotional and a passionate response from Thomas. My Lord and my God. It was the first time anyone had ever looked at Jesus and used what is the Greek word theos and called him God. The skeptic had become fully convinced. This was no failed prophet. He was no delusional revolutionary. Thomas had not been duped. It had not been a mirage. He wasn't stupid. Thomas believes. He believes Jesus is both Lord of creation and God of the universe. Seeing the scars on Jesus convinced Thomas to the degree that he would indeed die for his Lord. And history tradition tells us that he took this so seriously that Thomas went to India, a very, very hostile and native land at that time in the first century. And Thomas was the first one to share the gospel with the people of India. And many became Christ followers there until Thomas himself was martyred. He was killed by some of the local Indian people for his faith in Jesus. Verse 29, Jesus said, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." And this is where it becomes very personal for you and for me. You see, there's a few places in Scripture where Jesus speaks beyond his current time and says something for those way out in the distant future. And this is one of those times, because he knew that it would be the testimony of people like Thomas and like John and the other apostles who were eyewitnesses, that those of us down the road, those of us in the years to come, the centuries to come, the millennia to come, all we would have to go on is the book, the Word, the Bible, where the testimonies of the eyewitnesses were written down. And Jesus says, "Blessed are you who have not seen, and yet you believe." And that word blessed, it's a Greek word that we translate from Greek makarios. You may know that the Bible, the New Testament, was originally written in the Greek language, and we have to translate it to English to understand. But sometimes the Greek words are so rich and so full, we don't have an exact word. And so blessed is a good word, but it doesn't quite grab the full meaning. That word blessed, it means to be happy. Happy are those. Not just that, though. It declares them accepted by God. When you are blessed, you're not just happy, you're accepted by God. And those of you who believe, even though you have not seen, your life will be happy. There will be happiness in your life. It won't be a perfect life. There will be trials. There will be difficulties. But like the survey I referred to at the start of this message, for the most part, you'll be very satisfied. And you will also have the promise of being accepted by God because you believe. As I wrap up, I just want to mention one more place where Thomas is mentioned. It's in John chapter 14, verses 4 through 6. And Jesus says to his disciples, he says, you know the way to where I'm going. Now, if you read that in context, you can check it out later today. Maybe go back to John chapter 14, read it in context. But you'll see that what he says just before "you know where I'm going," it's a little confusing. You know, I mean, if you read it for the first year, you'll be like, I'm not so sure. And the next verse in John chapter 14, verse 5, Thomas actually speaks up. And that's exactly what he does. He says, I'm not sure that we know the way to where you're going, Lord. I mean, Thomas needs details, right? Some of y'all are like that, aren't you? Some of y'all, what are we, how are we going to do that? How are we going to get there? How much is it going to cost? Ruth, did I say that out loud? That's my wife, by the way. Jesus responds to Thomas with one of the greatest statements in all of history. Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. And no one comes to the Father, which means gets to heaven, but through me. Amen. Folks, this is the very meaning of Easter. It's why we celebrate Easter. It's why Easter is so important. It's why we do all this craziness, right? I mean, spend hours and hours rehearsing for songs, not just this Sunday, but every Sunday. It's why, a bunch of people get together and they pool their money and they hire someone like me to work full time so we can study the scriptures all week long, right? So I can teach you what the Word of God says. I mean, who does that? That's crazy. Unless it's true. Unless it's true. And the resurrection of Jesus is as true as it gets. And I tell you with all my heart, I believe in the Son of God. I believe that Jesus came to earth. God became man. And I believe he lived a life that I couldn't live because I'm too sinful and imperfect. And he died on the cross a death that I should have died because I'm a sinful man. I should have paid for my sin, but he paid for it for me. And I believe that he was resurrected on the third day and that he appeared not only to these apostles, but it says at one time to more than 500 of the early believers. And I believe the written testimony that we find in the scriptures are true eyewitness accounts. And by the way, those who study the language of antiquities and the literature of antiquities also agree that these were actual writings by the first-hand eyewitness disciples of Jesus, inspired by God's Holy Spirit. And I believe salvation is found in no one else but in the name of Jesus. There is no path, there are no paths, there are no principles, there are no pillars. There is only a person, and that's the person of Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life. He didn't merely point to the truth. He didn't merely show them the way. He didn't merely tell them how to improve their lives. Because you see, it's not Jesus' teaching that makes us Christian. It is Jesus himself. My Lord and my God. Let's pray. Father God, as we come to you in prayer right now, we want to lift you up, oh God. We lift you up in glory and honor. God, right now, with every head bowed and every eye closed, I just simply want to speak to those of you who have never made a commitment to Jesus Christ. You're here today, you're watching online, and there's never been a time when you've given your life to Jesus. And I want to give you that opportunity because you may have been that skeptic. And today you may have realized that you're not the only skeptic, that there were people who knew Jesus, who walked with Jesus, who even saw his miracles, but they were skeptical. God is not offended by your skepticism. But today you hear the truth. And today you understand. And today you want to say yes to Jesus. So if that's you, I invite you to pray a simple prayer. You can repeat these words after me, nothing magical about the words. You can just say it any way you want to. But I invite you just to repeat after me. I'm going to invite everybody here to repeat after me. We all pray together. We don't want anybody praying alone. Everybody pray together. Repeat after me. Lord God, I come to you. I know that I am a sinner. I understand my good works will never be good enough to get me into heaven. I now know that Jesus is who he says he is. He is the Son of God. He died on the cross for my sins. And he was raised on the third day. I now get it that you offer me the free gift of salvation. So today, Jesus, I receive your free gift of salvation. I give my life to you. I will follow you as best as I can for the rest of my life. Now, while heads are bowed and eyes are closed, I just want to know, It's just me and you. If you prayed that prayer for the first time, would you just lift your hand up quietly? Just lift your hand so I can see hands going up over here, over here, over here, hands back here, hands over here, hands going up across the worship center. Praise God. At home, lift your hand up. Symbolically do it. Lift your hand up. Praise God. I want to thank you, everybody. Church, let's celebrate those who are new followers of Jesus Christ today. Amen. Amen. Band, take us home.
If everybody would like to stand and worship with us one last time. Not one last time, but for today.
So good to see you.
All right, let's worship the Lord like he deserves to be worshiped.
You doing good? Good, good. You look good. You look great. Oh, yeah.
Yes, Lord, you do.
Ride that train right to heaven.
Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man.
Saturday was silent. Surely it was through. But since when has the possible ever stopped you?
Never. Yes.
Friday's disappointment
Come on.
is Sunday's empty tomb. Since when has the possible ever stopped you? This is the sound of dry bones rattling. This is the praise make a dead man walk again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again.
Hey.
This is the sound of dry bones rattling.
Sing this with us.
Pentecostal fire
Thank you so much for celebrating with us the resurrection this morning, and what a celebration it has been. I loved hearing about how Jesus appeared to Thomas, and let's be a people who look out for how Jesus appears to us this week. He might show up in a sunset or in a sunrise, or in the smile of a child or a friend. I'm going to pray a blessing over you from 1 Peter 1:3. Praise be to God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Go in peace. Have a great week. Happy Resurrection Day.